All right, so I guess we will call this meeting to order. And did everyone have a chance to see the agenda? And are there any changes needed to the agenda?
So Paul, I actually have two additions to the agenda. Under
Okay,
new business, I have a property owner request for trail usage increase.
say that again, Stacy, a request for what?
I have a property owner request that concerns trail usage increases.
Okay,
And then also under new business, I have charter evaluation, the Trails Committee charter evaluation.
that's also under new business?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so everybody heard those. Do I have a motion to make the changes to the agenda?
I will make a motion, Laurie.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, aye.
All right, aye. I believe I heard most everybody say aye. So any opposed to the changes? Okay. So Stacy, those changes will be added to the new business then. Stacy, I had a question for you on the minutes. Didn't we approve that by way of email?
Yeah, so what you have to do now is record it into the minutes. And so because they need to go to the board meeting in June instead of waiting until July, they're now approved via email. So
Right.
really, Paul, all you need to do is just say that the committee minutes of, and whatever the date is, has been approved via email.
Okay, just make that statement.
Correct.
Okay. So, well, y'all heard her. No, I'm kidding. So the agenda was, the minutes were passed around with a couple of changes made. And as far as I saw it, everyone approved the latest minutes with the changes. So that will be passed on to the board as written. I really have no comments other than to just say I appreciate everybody still getting out on the trails and the work that you're doing. Hope everybody's staying well. And from there, board comments. Kurt, do you have any comments for us? Kirk, you're muted.
Okay,
There we go.
yeah. Well, I just think the trails is a great place to get your exercise, especially during the pandemic here.
Yep.
All right, sir. Stacy.
All right, so Jan and I are socially distancing in my office, so we're switching back and forth here. So have a couple of things. You guys have the written report that I sent, but there's a few things that since I completed that report that I wanted to add to it. So first, in trail maintenance, a recreation committee member had actually emailed Paul and I on a walking trail only sign that used to be over on the DeSoto Trail was missing. And so I talked with maintenance, and today or yesterday afternoon, they actually sent me an email that said the next rain day, they'll be making signage, and they've added that so that the DeSoto Trail, and I believe that's the Spillway Trail, is the one that the walking trail only sign is missing from. And she said that there were a couple of vehicles they actually saw drive down the road. They weren't POA working on maintenance. So they'll be getting that signage back up. So I wanted to let you guys know about that.
So Stacy,
Stacy, as far as I know, or could tell from the email, the road that she was speaking of goes from the general area of the DeSoto Beach as as you go to the beach, there's a little road that turns off to the right and goes down to the walking trail.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a wide road. It would be
Yeah.
easy to drive on. And so I feel pretty sure that's got to be where she's talking about.
It was on Hernando between Carmona and Toledo.
No, this one is actually on the gravel road that goes to the beach on the
Okay, 'cause I
email that
just
she
talked
sent
to-
me.
I
Yeah.
just talked to her husband this
Okay.
morning. It was the Hernando Trail between Carmona and Toledo that cars are turning down that trail and just driving on up to the different roads.
Okay.
So Stacy, if they're gonna work on signage, there's a whole bunch of signs on the second page of the master plan.
Okay.
Can you make sure that they have that and that they are working on, there's a lot of signs that need to be done.
Yes, I can make sure that that's on their list for the next rain day to do those signs.
Okay,
Okay, so let me turn that back around here. I know people who are going to watch this later are going to get really drunk, probably, and cameras back and forth. So,
they're probably already drunk if they're watching it.
so they have already. They've been working on trails, and I'll tell you, we're not as slow as we've been, but we still don't have them all up to snuff. We know that. I will tell you, the Nature Conservancy Trail is getting mowed on Thursday. They are starting to roll trails this week, to drag and roll the trails this week. And every time they just about got one done, we had a big rainstorm and it made it look bad before anybody could ever even walk on it. So I know it doesn't look like they've been working, but they have. But I will tell you now that they have all the licensed facilities back up and open, we'll be able to hit trails a little harder than we have. Lori, you had sent me an email on the Spillway Bridge deck and the boards rotting out. We did send that over to Public Services, and we sent that over last week. They were supposed to have gotten to it, but I'll be honest, I didn't get a follow-up back from them.
Okay,
I didn't think about it until today. So if you're walking Balboa, or if any of you guys have walked the Balboa Trail, if you'll check those boards, let me know if that's completed, and we can move from there.
so what it is for people who don't know is, I noticed I was walking across the bridge and there's a lot of rotting boards on the surface of the bridge that weren't there just like a month before. So I don't know if it represents a big problem with the wood that was put down to build that bridge or not. So I requested that they just go out there and take a look at it.
Yeah, so we actually sent the crew who built it to take a look at it to see if there was something maybe poured on it, or if the boards were just rotting out that quickly. Because their other boards looked good. It was just one area that seemed to have the issues.
Yeah, there was like 4 boards and they were all scattered out. So
Yeah, so
odd.
so we'll work on that from there. But I'll ensure and I'll follow up and
Okay.
make sure that that's been done.
Stacy, 2 things that I'd sent to you, I don't know, it's been a month ago, I guess. And one of them I know has not been done. The second one, not sure, but just to refresh everybody's memory. One is on Cedar Creek at the far, far end of the Cardinal Trail, that last bench area. There's a tree that has kind of fallen over. The tree itself is not a problem. It sort of hangs over the bench. Problem is the tree is absolutely covered in a huge poison ivy vine. And my fear is if somebody walks along there and doesn't know what poison ivy looks like, I mean, it's right at head high.
Okay. Paul, I don't remember this email at all. You probably sent it, but I probably lost it in translation. Will you resend
Okay.
it so I can forward it to grounds maintenance?
Sure.
Certainly something that we would have taken care of immediately, and I just missed it.
Okay. The second issue is the last bench on the Beaver Dam Trail. Looks like a tree probably fell on it or something. And
Yeah,
broke
that
it.
one we're actually working on with Audubon because it was a donated bench. So we've been
Okay.
working with them and engraving and all of that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
we actually have that one on our radar from Audubon. They actually contacted us.
All right.
We'll get that taken care of as well.
Okay, that was it. I'll resend that or send a new email about that poison ivy.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so as we go down through the rest of the director's report, the very first thing there under trail planning, I did want to let you know, Recreation Committee received a request for an archery range out at that Deposito Paseo property that's over there off Phoenix. I met with development, Stephanie Heffer, Jason Temple and Public Services, and myself, and then Norman Meredith is going to join us as well. We're going to go out and actually take a site visit to the property to look. They're looking at actually as a club, similar to bocce and lawn bowling, to put in all the expenses for the portable bales, the lanes that they're necessary for an archery range. But I wanted to let the Trails Committee know, because remember, that's also an area that we looked at for trails, for both the single track mountain bike trail as well as some hiking trails, because there is some grade in that area. And then it also has a way to connect to Hernando from Grove Park with the common property that's from there over to that Deposito Paseo. So the one thing that I wanted to say is for the planning team, we might want to go out and take a look at that area. We may want to take a ride through that area and pull the GIS maps and look at that area. So while the Recreation Committee and the POA is looking at what would we do in a development plan in order to budget money for the development of that site, I think the Trails Committee should also be involved in what else could we do in terms of trails on that. It's about 35 acres. It's cleared, some of it's not. And of course, entrance into it is through a neighborhood. So we need to be very careful of what we're doing there. And we'd need to contact the homeowners but there's good access to the property off of that neighborhood road. So just wanted the Trails Committee to kind of be aware of that Deposito property there. And then also under planning, Buzz and Lori and I have a meeting with Brad tomorrow on the kayak trail over on Lake DeSoto. So I just want to let you know, we talked about it at the last meeting. That is still taking place. Just COVID kind of put us back a bit. So that meeting is going to take place tomorrow. And then under promotion, I had gotten an email from a property owner, and he was really concerned about both trail etiquette and dogs. So we still have dogs on the trails that are not on a leash. And we've got some etiquette issues in terms of cyclists, bicycle riders, both on e-bikes and normal bikes, who have almost run down walkers. So we want to make sure, and part of what we're going to do is in the Friday Digest, as well as in our social media, is put out information that basically says, number one, dogs are required to be on leash on Hot Springs Village trails. That's a county ordinance, and we'll actually link to that ordinance. The second part of that is the trail etiquette, and we'll put out some information reminding people that golf carts have to yield to bicyclists. Bicyclists have to yield to walkers. And so, we'll just want to make sure that we're putting that information out there. But I wanted you guys to be aware that, we've been contacted by some property owners who had specifically had some issues on the Balboa Trail. That seems to be the one that we get the most dogs not on a leash. But now I guess people are using the trail to access the beach, and they're not adhering to that right of way that we have on our trails, so that walkers have that kind of ultimate right of way. And then the last thing is an update on promotions, and that is with the Trails Committee biannual master plan that we approved at the May meeting. We changed some of our trails to neighborhood paths. So just wanted to let you know that we'll be updating. We've already done the online updates for the website. The board has asked for a few, we had hoped to already put the website out, but the board's asked for a few additional changes. They're working on that now. In the meantime, we had that printed brochure that we were developing. And since we voted on this now, we'll change those to paths. We'll get that printed, and we'll actually get that, we'll have printed copies available by Friday, but we're going to take that printed form and also put it out on our existing website. And then we'll kind of go from there. So at least if people want to print off a trail map, while there's no actual maps themselves, there's tons of information that tells them where to park, how to access the trail, if there's a bathroom available, all of that. And that also leads me to Buzz Carpenter had given me a contact information of someone who would be able to develop, who might be interested in developing new trail maps so that they're consistent as we get ready to have to order new signage for our trailheads because some of those are fading out. And so I've reached out to her, and I'll wait to hear back from her, and I'll give you an update once I've gotten back from her. So other than that, I will take any questions that you guys have. I know I talked about the Hernando Trail, but it's on the agenda as a later agenda item, so I didn't address it during director's comments.
So I have one question. I read the Village Voice today, and under the forestry thing, it said there was this Knowles, whoever Knowles is, they flagged a trail for relocation after it was found to encroach on private property. Do you know what trail that is? Is that Hernando or is that a different trail?
No, that's Hernando Trail.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and when we built on it, it was reserved property.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
I just,
So
I didn't
now
know,
it's
I
been
didn't know if
sold,
that
it's
was
now
a
private
different
property.
one. Yeah, I
No,
didn't know
it's
if that
the
was a
same
different
piece.
one or a problem. Okay.
But remember in the director's report, I put in there, and I want to make sure that in case you guys didn't read that, I want to make sure we've been told that all CCI owned reserved property is available for purchase. Should other parcels of reserved property be sold that contain trails, Public Services will be evaluating alternatives for trail locations where they're affected, but those alternatives will be reported to the Trails Committee for evaluation, right? You also probably need to discuss, and you may need to get a group together, Paul, or their planning team could do that, long-term solutions for trails that are fully contained on reserved property. And we are specifically probably discussing Cedar Creek. It is fully contained on reserved property.
And Beaver Dam.
And Beaver Dam. Both of those are on reserved property that could be sold. We have no indication that they're going to be sold, and there's no for sale sign on those pieces of lands. They are located in some cases in lower lying areas and in some flood zones. So they may not ever be sold. But I just think that the Trails Committee, especially in their November update, Lori, to the Trails Master Plan, I think the discussion has to be held on what pieces are on reserved and or properties that could be sold. What are the alternatives for relocation of that trail, if there is one? And then also on fully contained trails, what are the alternatives if that piece of property is sold? Where else could we be?
So I have one question on that. So Public Works is going to decide how to reroute Hernando instead of talking to the trails? They're just going to give us options, or how does this process going to
Be
work?
included in the system.
Yeah, so all Public Works has done right now is marked and staked out the road right of way, because that's the area we have to work with. There's no other common property in that area. So what we'll do now is actually get with Todd Knowles, is the forester for Hot Springs Village. So what we'll do now from this meeting is your planning group, which I believe is you, Jan, Buzz, and Paul. We'll get together with Todd. We'll go out and look at the area that they have staked to see if that area should be addressed. And again, this, I tell you what, this is on the agenda down
Okay.
at 7C.
We can do it at the end.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about, yeah, because I have some more notes on that. Let's talk about that when we get there, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. So Paul, other than that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you guys might have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you.
Anybody else have a question for Stacy on any of those comments? All right, we'll move on to the subcommittee promotion. Jan and Pam, do y'all have anything?
No.
No? Okay. Guy?
Don't really do
program?
anything during the summer months because it's just too hot.
Right.
So we'll probably try to do something for late September into October.
I do need, so there is one thing I need from the promotion is someone, and since Pam's not here, that means Jan. I need an article about the photo contest and the winners with the photos in order to be submitted to the Village Voice. So I'm wondering, Jan, if that might be something you'd be interested in doing. So that's something that we can do, is announce the winners from the spring photo contest, which we're going to talk about a little later on the agenda. But that's the only thing that I need right now.
Okay.
Got it.
Guy, any programming?
Is the Village Fair, I saw it's been rescheduled to like mid-September, is that right?
End of September, September 30th, Guy.
September 30th? Okay.
Yes, sir.
We still plan on having a booth there?
Yes, sir. I think it's still a good opportunity for
Yep.
people to join the Friends of the Trails.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Okay.
And
I still wonder if September 30th, if they're going to allow it, but we'll see. You know, we have time for that, but
We do,
Oh,
but
my-
we've also planned for it, Guy. The Coronado Center staff has planned for it to be done in a socially distanced way. So we'll,
okay.
no matter what, we're just planning from the get-go now that if there are social distance and physical distance guidelines still in place, we'll be taking that into consideration for the fair.
Right. I've had a lot of my trade shows in my industry. In fact, they've all been canceled. So but we still have some time. But I would like to do it.
okay. Planning,
Nothing
Laura?
new other than the one right below this, the Hernando Trail. We can get right back to that discussion.
Lori, are there any items on the master plan that rank towards the top where we need to do any scouting or anything at any time in the fall?
There are a few that we need to go do in the fall, but obviously when the weather's cooler. But most of it is, most of them that we haven't walked are really low priority.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Now, one thing I have done is I kind of I was reading that the board was looking more at doing things in like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plans. So I did take a stab at changing the master plan to represent 1, 3, and 5 year instead of the way we currently have it. Doesn't change it drastically, but I might have that as an alternative to look at before November.
Okay. Buzz, do you have anything? Or Jan?
No.
Okay. Moving on to unfinished business.
No, we got to talk about Hernando Trail.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hernando Trail.
Oh, that's right. We were putting that in under unfinished.
We're under planning. So Hernando Trail, so there is a portion of Hernando Trail, 5 acres, approximately 5 acres that were sold on the corner of Danville and DeSoto Boulevard, right? That property, we were notified in late May that property had been sold and that the property owner wanted to ensure that the trail was removed from the property. So Jan had sent an email out a couple weeks ago, and she brought up some topics that the Trails Committee needs to discuss, right? So she had a few questions as well. Is the moving of the trail coming out of the public service budget or out of the trails budget? So here's the thing, all grounds maintenance for trails comes out of the public services grounds maintenance budget. New construction for a capital project comes out of the Recreation Department Administration Division for trails. Because we're having to move that trail, or if we're choosing to move that trail, whatever we decide to do, because Jan's got some additional questions here, the money would most likely be kind of up in the air. I'm not really sure of the answer to that question right now. So right now, all capital is held. So obviously there's no capital funds there. If we want to ensure that we're connecting the Hernando East to the Hernando West and keeping that 8.5 mile trail, then the money would have to come out of the maintenance side of what we do in for that trail. I think it's going to depend on the cost, right? The one thing that Jan also said, should we even worry about connecting the Hernando Trail or split the trail at that point? We have a Hernando West that goes to, before you get to that property at Danville Road, and then we have a Hernando East that starts then at the Ponce de Leon Center and goes all the way down to Ponce and DeSoto. We could certainly, the committee could choose to do that. And I think that the 4 who are on the planning group should probably get together and talk about that and then bring it back maybe for the committee to discuss. Then at that point, as Jan points out, we wouldn't have to worry about trying to safely cross folks on the bridge any longer, and would certainly, save money without having to install those safety features. So I guess, Paul, maybe what I'm looking for is, number one, some guidance from the Trails Committee. And I think that starts with your planning subcommittee, getting together, talking about what those options are. And then before we even meet with Todd Knowles in Forestry to look to see where they laid out the road right of way, I think the committee has to decide if they want to split the trail up, have a Hernando West and a Hernando East, and this one is this far and the other one is this far. So,
So I guess I have one comment, because I have actually gone out there and walked where I believe the trail is going to be removed, and I've walked the right of way, but I've also kind of driven back behind it north. So there are some like old roads out there. So I guess the question is, can we get some type of good map that shows exactly the parcel that's been sold and exactly the section of the trail that needs to be relocated? Because I don't think we can make a decision until we for sure know what that looks like.
yeah, so Lori, I can get that information for you. In fact, I have just a small black and white one on my desk.
Okay.
But the one thing that I can tell you is there is little to no common property around this piece of property. So you're going to be extremely limited unless you go all the way back up to Menorca. And instead of coming down DeSoto at Menorca, we can find some common property that would allow you to connect back over to Ponce de Leon Drive and come in a different way, which would be a whole other set of trails. And so, but I'll get you guys, once you decide when you're going to have that map, I'll get you the GIS map of that area that shows the common property versus the private property.
Okay.
But just to kind of give you an idea, and I mean, I can kind of show you the map here. You can see all the part and parcels. This is the piece of property that we're talking about. Make sure I'm pointing at the right place. Yeah, this is the piece of property that we're talking about. But as you can see, this is all built out in lots. So a piece of
Stacy, how far west does the piece of property, or are we talking about where the
There's a
trail-
stake. There's a stake in the middle of the trail, Paul. So I think you can see that when you walk it.
Okay, and
There's
so
a-
the other
There's a
question
stake
is,
there. It's not much, actually, or at least it
it's
didn't
not a
look
big
like.
piece.
It's not a big piece. We could just end it right there and just shift everything down
Is-
to that and not connect, because
It's
it's
a
this-
problem.
is this where our parking lot is?
Yes. So we
That's
lose
what
the
I thought.
parking. There's the parking lot. There's a trail map and a trail box and a couple of
Mhm.
benches and some tree
Yeah.
tags and all that stuff that has to be removed. But we could just shift it all and end it right there, or we could cut out that whole section and end it at Minorca. So
Is that also where there's a restroom?
no restroom.
No
The
restroom.
restroom is down by Remax, across from Remax.
Yeah, the restroom is down by Ponce and DeSoto. What I will tell you, Lori,
That's right.
the parking area is in the road right of way.
Oh, really?
Trail is not. So
Oh,
could,
so we
parking
could
lot
go
is-
along the edge there.
yeah,
But then we still have the problem of we can't, that crossing at Danville Road is still a problem. I mean, I won't walk that with my dogs. It's too damn dangerous. So,
And depending on what kind of commercial goes in there, as far as ingress and egress for parking for that business and the amount of traffic going in and out, we'd have people walking across the entrance of that. We've had people complain in the past about the trail being too close to DeSoto and it was ugly and they wanted flowers planted. And that was just that little segment between the very end of Hernando at the east end and Ponce. So, I mean, it looks like we might end up just having to go with having 2 segments of Hernando.
Right. So let me ask this. So that you said the parking lot is on right of way,
That's correct.
but the trail is not. So I'm guessing if we
The
would
trail
still
goes
no
up.
longer, we would no longer be able to use the parking lot because we couldn't access the trail from the parking lot.
You could move so that
We can move the trail close to the road.
yeah, just like you've done down at Ponce and DeSoto where the trail is right along the road, the area that people don't really like because they like to be up in the woods when they're walking a trail. You could do that on this same segment,
Okay.
Hernando. And that's what the stakes are so that the four of you guys who are on the planning subcommittee can go out and evaluate that. Look
All
at
right.
what it would look like, how long that area is. As Lori says, it's been staked. But the parking area is outside of the property. It is in the road right of way. The trail is just farther back up in the woods, and that's what put it on to that private property. And Jan's right. As whoever develops that piece of property, their driveway could be right there where that parking area is. So, I mean, that's something to consider as well. So again, Trails Committee needs to go out. They need to look at that section of the trail and then bring, and then we can decide whether or not we even want to pursue it with Public Services, or if the recommendation is that we just cut this trail to two different trails, a Hernando West and a Hernando East. I think that's just something that you guys need to talk about.
Okay, so back to the process. So it said that Public Works was going to come to us with alternatives. Is that just what the staking is?
Yeah, I think what it is they put the stakes out that we could evaluate
Okay.
whether or not there was even room. Because remember, that's a multi-purpose trail.
Yeah.
And because that's a multi-purpose trail, it has to be 10 foot wide because we allow golf carts on multi-purpose trails. So, depending on what you have there in the road right of way, how close you are to the street, I think all of that. So I think the statement from them was to evaluate, to mark where the road right of way was. And the Trails Committee is to decide, is that going to be a trail, or are you going to change that trail? And that's the Trails Committee charter. That's what you guys will now do now that it's marked by Public Services, and we can move from there.
All right. Buzz, Jan, or Lori, how about I send out an email to the three of you and with dates that are workable, and we'll try to find a common time where we can all get out
Yep.
there.
Works.
And Paul,
Yeah.
send me that. That way I can send you the map. That way I'll know when you need the map and I can get it to you guys.
Okay. All right, on to unfinished business. Tree tag update. Stacy, you got any news for me?
I do. So New York reopened. The place reopened in New York. The tree tags have arrived and they are in my office just in time for 105 degrees. So you can put them up on the trees.
Did you disinfect them really well since they came from New York?
We saw the box and we wrapped it in plastic and we haven't touched it since.
Just wait 3 days.
Yeah. They look really good. The custom signs are in as well, because remember we have trees here in Arkansas that they didn't have signs that matched ours. They're a little different in color, but when you hang them up on the trees, most people are going to be able to see, and as they fade. Again, this is part of our 5-year plan to put tags on all of our trail systems. So we have those available, and they're in my office for whenever you're ready for them. And I'm happy to hold them till the fall as well. Unless you can get a 60 or 70 degree day and you just feel like going for a hike.
I go hiking almost every day anyway.
Ice skinny.
Guy, you helped me hang some of those pre-tags, the ribbons. Are you interested in being involved in hanging the actual tags?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I'll holler at you.
Okay.
Are you okay with doing it in the summertime?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We could do it, early in the morning or
Yeah.
7 at night, or, whatever works.
Okay,
I'm like you, I walk trails almost every night.
okay. I'll get in touch with you.
Okay.
All right. The vest, Stacy, any news there?
I have gotten a hold of Jack Wells down at So Perfect. He's compiling different types of vests for us with the prices, since we got to watch a budget. And I told him that I had tried to find some logos online that might be appropriate, but that since he's in that business of logo types, that he might be able to get some stuff together for us. So I'll be meeting with him either Thursday or Friday, which is ever available for him. So,
And I may have something on those. Oh, hang on. Let me switch. I may have something on those logos as well. So we've been working with a graphics designer in the recreation department for the last 7 months or so, trying to develop something that we can use to showcase each of our amenities. And just to kind of give you an idea, he built me, we call him the Conquistador Man. So he's got the Hot Springs Village emblem, the Conquistador, you know, and I mean, this is my book, and I used him on there when he first gave him to me. But he's been working on developing one who walks trails, who goes swimming, who slides on a slide, you know, represents each of the things. He reads a book, he has a glass of wine. So he's been working on those, and he's just finally completed the project. And so I may actually have a logo that may work on those Friends of the Trail vests. And I'll get that out to Jan for her to evaluate first, and then for her to present to the committee, and you guys can look at that point.
and I'll also check, I'll run it by, if you can get that to me before Thursday, I'll run it by Jack and see what, because that's kind of a complicated figure.
He's really cool though.
Yeah, but you know, we got to worry about costs
Yeah.
too. So I'll
Yeah.
run that by Jack and see what he thinks he can translate into his embroidery or his
Okay.
laminating type thing.
All right. Stacy, what do you have on the Trails photo contest?
All right, like I said, we're gonna make some people dizzy. All right, so the Trails Photo Contest number one, I want to thank Lori and Dick Christie, and Jan found him for us, for judging the photos that we got in. So, and I wanted to share with you guys the photo winners. Okay, so this is the winner of the wildlife category, and
Cool.
taken by Ken Haley. This is called Butterflies on Thistle. Okay, this is the winner of the water features was taken by Jan Rowe. Woohoo!
Ooh, Jan.
So this was taken on the Coronado Boat Ramp Trail. And let me go back just for a second so that I can show you guys the first photo again. Back up. This one was taken over on the DeSoto Spillway Trail. So Jan won the water features, and this was on the Coronado Boat Ramp Trail. This was taken by Kurt Braun, and it's Woman and Dog, and this is over on the Cedar Creek Trail. This was the winner of the People and Pets category. And then we're going to skip right quick. This is the winner of the Flowers and Foliage. This was taken over on the Beaver Dam Trail, and this was taken by Steve Carlton. And then again, I got to go back. When you got to go back, you got to make it smaller. This was the overall winner. This was taken by Vic Prislipsky, and this was taken over on the DeSoto Spillway Trail. So for our contest winners, I'll get the photos and the winner's information to Jan so that she can get information submitted to The Voice, something that they may be able to use when they have the need to do. All right.
Congratulations, Jan.
Thank you.
That was a nice pick.
Yep.
Okay, Stacy, you're still up. You got two more things, I believe, under.
Okay,
Or
I'll
that-
quit flipping around then. Okay, so the first one was a property owner request for trail usage increase. So I had a property owner contact me. Her name is Bethany. And she said, my idea to increase trail usage for all ages, is to place porta potties in parking areas of trails every 2 miles on the longer trails and at the trailhead locations on the shorter trails. It will increase confidence, encourage all walks to walk further if they have an emergency need, even to use the restroom. Some people stopped using the trails for fear of having an accident. A trash can near these areas would also be nice so people can throw away bottles, cans, wrappers instead of leaving them on the trail. Thank you for your consideration. And she asked that this information be shared with the Trails Committee. So a couple things on that, and I think, again, it's part of that planning discussion. This is not the first time, of course, this has been brought up to the committee, but it's something that long-term, is this something the committee wants to look at, adding to the Trails Master Plan, that there are bathrooms available, or marking bathrooms where public bathrooms may be available near trails. And so she had asked that this be shared with the Trails Committee, wanted to make sure that that was done, and that it's part of the discussion that would be had among the committee members. Number one, if these trail maps that we're developing or the information that we're putting online includes information about the closest public bathroom, or whether or not we want to put porta potties on these trails, trash cans on these trails. You know, some of them are out in the woods, so we want to make sure that animals couldn't get into them. They have to be accessible. Both the porta potty and the trash can have to be accessible for staff, so that the porta potty can be cleaned and emptied, so that the trash can can be picked up on a regular basis. I think all of those things that should be discussed, and it could be part of a larger discussion, Paul, that maybe the planning committee has in terms of moving forward with trails discussion.
I think it is an excellent idea, but the
Worry about
cost.
the aesthetics also, because if you put it where homes can see it, then we're going to have the extra expense of having to put some sort of shielding around it.
Mm.
I actually think it's a horrible idea. I think there's a couple of trails where we could consider it, but I think every 2 miles is
Yeah, every 2 miles.
it's just way overkill. And
Yep.
Yeah.
and that would just, like Jan said, there would be a lot of porta potties, there would be a lot of cost and a lot of
Yep.
maintenance cost, and it would be ugly.
Yeah,
Well,
totally
now,
agree.
I would agree with you on that. I think every 2 miles is overkill.
Yeah.
I do think that if we want to increase usage of the trails, we need to have something out there. But I don't know, one per trail. And then there's the cost of just the maintenance of them. How much is it per porta potty, Stacy?
They're it's about $1,200 each a year.
Wow.
$1,200 a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think,
You know, and the
Yeah.
trash, we have trash cans at the trail. Most of the trailheads have a trash.
Yeah,
can.
that's no problem.
But
Yeah.
you still have those people that don't want to carry stuff, and they just drop it along the trail as they go.
But they're going to do that anyway, even if
Yeah,
you had
you're
a trash
never gonna-
can
Yeah.
every 2 miles.
You're never going to have a total compliance.
No.
well, is it something we need to discuss? Or is everybody,
How about we just say next month when you go walk your trail, rethink about whether it needs an additional bathroom facility anywhere or an additional trash can anywhere, and then come back next month and give an update.
Okay.
Agreed.
sounds good. All right, so everybody remember to do that.
Okay. All right, so next, are you ready for me? So charter is that, so at the beginning of each committee year, which we're in, the committees are asked to review their charters. Remember, we did this back in April in terms of membership because there was a change for both the staff and the board. Assigned person would also become part of the committee. And so we came up with a recommendation that we're going to make to the board for their consideration of all the other charter changes that they're looking at, but to have a range between 7 and 13 on the committee in order to take care of the miles of trails that are currently part of our system. What we want to do, though, is before we make that recommendation to the board, we need to make sure that there are no other recommendations that we need to make for charter changes. So we need to evaluate the charter. And the problem, I think, is that if we wait until the next meeting, we're going to miss their July 15th meeting. So if we could do a fairly quick turnaround, Paul, and ask everybody to review the Trails Committee charter, of which I'm happy to email out. If they could review it by July the 3rd and send changes or recommendations to the entire committee, similar to how we do the minutes, then we can come up with a charter that we can then present to the board for discussion at their July 8th meeting. And then they would be able to actually put it on their agenda for voting on their July 15th. I think that timing will work. Recreation Committee is doing the same thing with their charter. Again, having it done, they met a week earlier, so theirs is actually, their deadline is a week earlier. But that way, we know we need to make the recommendation to the number on the committee. There may be some other changes that we need to make as well. And so just wanted to kind of make that recommendation all at once. Once we have that recommendation to make, we'll actually send it to Kirk, and then Kirk will actually take that or send that on to the committee chair to be placed on the agenda.
Okay. All right, everybody approve of that idea? Stacy will send it out and do a round robin of any changes that you see. Okay. Stacy, that was the new business, correct?
Correct.
So does anybody have any questions or comments on anything else?
So I think the last thing, though, and I had asked for us not to be quick to adjourn because we need to decide how we want to meet at the July meeting. So the Arkansas Department of Health has released their directives for phase 2. I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a lot of changes. Between phase 1 and phase 2, the only difference is now you can go to 66% capacity of a room. But we were already limited, not by the number of people we could get in, but by 6-foot distancing. So going to phase 2 made no difference, except in the auditorium at the Coronado Center, you could go from 50 to 65. So, there's not big differences there. Here's the thing about indoor venues. If we meet at an indoor venue, we are required to have 6 feet of social distancing and wear a mask at all times. If we want to forego the mask, then we are required to have 12 feet of social distancing from each other in order to not have to wear a mask. So I don't know, Paul, if the committee wants to make a decision today, if they want to, discuss it. But those are the directives we have today. Granted, the governor could come back in 2 weeks, and until he limits or decreases physical distancing, it doesn't matter what he does in terms of 33%, 66%, or back to 100%. If he's back to 100% and he's still requiring 60%, that doesn't make a difference at Coronado Center or Ponce. Makes a difference at like Verizon Arena, where they can get bigger numbers at 6-foot social distance. But at Coronado Center and Ponce Center, that doesn't help us any. So I want everybody to kind of know where we are in terms of social distancing and the requirements by the Department of Health. Those came out last Friday. We're going to be implementing them in phase 2 directives by Friday of this week. And so I don't know, Paul, if you want to take a poll now, if they want to meet in person. And if we meet in person, if you want 6 feet and masks, or if you want 12 feet and no masks, or if you still want to try to do it electronically. So I will now leave it up.
What if we met outside in one of the pavilions?
Yeah,
How
so
far apart?
outdoor venues are a little different. So you can do outdoor venues. They still require masks if you can't 6-foot distance. But if you can 6-foot distance outdoors, you don't have to wear a mask, which means outdoors, if you seat 6 feet away, you don't have to wear a mask. So we could meet at a pavilion and not have to wear a mask. Indoors requires 12 feet not to have to wear a mask.
Well, for the last month, the ACC has been meeting in the boardroom area at Pond Center. They're 12-foot spaced out at the tables. It has not been an issue for discussion. We can hear each other just fine. And they have the recording capabilities too, so that they can record our meetings. So if that can work with whatever is other people's schedule, the Pond Center, that might be something that we look at.
Stacy, could we meet in the auditorium?
Yeah, so the only thing about meeting in the auditorium, Paul, is I would have to then disinfect that entire space again. You're talking about Woodlands Auditorium?
Well, I was talking about the
Right here at Coronado.
Coronado.
Yeah,
Coronado.
you can meet at Coronado Center. The only thing is they're not set up to do recordings of meetings. You can do the 12-foot social distance and you don't have to wear the masks. That's just what you have to decide is if you're at an facility, it's 12 feet for no masks, 6 feet with a mask.
Did I hear somebody say that the Ponce is made up at the ACC meeting at 12-foot distancing? I didn't see 12 feet. I only see 6 feet.
Well, it's been,
They're tweaking it because of the new directives.
I can't reach out or lay down and meet the next person. I haven't personally taken a tape measure and measured it out, but we're sitting at the same places that the board meets without masks on.
Yeah, and
Anybody that
I
wants
see.
to zoom in, they can zoom in if they want to, and then we can also record easily there.
Yeah, so Kirk, in answer to your question, the board started meeting before health department directives were given for indoor and outdoor venues. So they started meeting based on just the requirement that you had to have less than 10 people in a building. And they didn't start out those meetings with masks. They do have a screening, I think a questionnaire that you guys answer each time. The new directive, well, the directives that came out, they do require masks if you're only sitting 6 feet apart, which is what the board is doing. And
Yeah.
We can
So,
spread the tables out.
yeah,
further.
but we do have room at both Ponce Center and Coronado Center to have 12 feet of social distancing,
Yeah.
no masks, if that's what the committee would like to do. Or, as Lori said, we could go over and have it at Cortez Pavilion, 6 feet of social distancing with no masks because you're outdoors. It's the difference between an outdoor venue and an indoor venue.
Right. Well, I was just, the recording makes it easier, but what I see right now, all I see are 6-foot tables, and each director is sitting at one of those tables. So they are not they're not 12 feet apart. They're only 6 feet apart.
Well, if you don't want to personally come into the meeting, it's set up that you can still Zoom.
Yeah, so we could still, if we chose to use Ponce de Leon Center, then we could zoom in anybody else who did, what I will say, if we're using Ponce, 12 feet of distance will get you no mask and 6 feet will require you to wear a mask.
Oh yeah, that's true. I understand that. But what I'm seeing is not 12 feet. What I'm seeing at the board meetings is 6 feet and no masks.
That's what the board is doing right now, Kirk, yes.
Okay.
Tables
But you-
can be-
But you say the directive with no mask should be 12 feet, not 6 feet.
That's what the Department of Health has for their large indoor venues, yes, sir.
Okay. Well then, they should have 2 tables for each person in the Ponce Center, I would think. Then.
That's the directive if they're not wearing masks, yes, sir. And we're making some of those adjustments now.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. So it's a new rule about the 12 feet with no masks.
Yeah, so it's part of the directives for large indoor venues. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wonder if anybody on the, at the Ponce Center knows that, because the last meeting I saw, it was only 6 feet and no mask.
Yeah, so those directives came out late Friday night, and I'm putting the information together now. Jamie is actually working on getting that out to all the committees.
Oh, that actually sounds very good. You know, of course, outdoor is the best. And I was going to ask a question. Is that fair that they're talking about in September? Is that outdoors?
Yes, so the fair that Guy referenced in September is our community fair. Right now it's scheduled for Coronado Community Fair. And like I said, one of the things that we're doing is in the planning stages, we're including social distancing. Masks would be required, you know, everything that phase 2 requires is how we're building that fair. If we're able to limit or to decrease the amount of physical distancing and or masks, then it just means we would be able to do it like a normal fair. But we are planning that event so that we can adhere to any directives that the Department of Health has for us at that time.
Oh, I see.
Could that fair be outside? It's September 30th. The weather might be pretty nice. I kind of like that idea that Kurt brought up.
Yeah, you know, Guy, I'm not sure.
I'm not trying to, you know, I mean, whatever works, but
Yeah, one of the biggest things is you get a lot of takeaway materials, paper, brochure,
yeah. Mhm.
outside, any sort of wind. And the only outside venue I could think of would be Balboa Pavilion.
That's what I was thinking about. Both,
You know, 'cause
really.
covered, but then
Right.
you've got wind coming off the lake pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
For all day long. So, I mean, it's certainly something we could talk about, but it is something the Coronado Center is including as part of their planning for the event.
Okay.
Back to the question at hand. I think the question is for our meeting next month, what do we want to do?
I don't want to wear a mask. I'll tell you that. That's just me. It's so hard to understand people.
It is.
I have a camera for you, Jan.
Yeah, well, we're not that technology advanced at my house.
We just plug it in. You have a USB
Camera
port
was
on your
on.
computer?
What?
You have a USB port on your computer?
I have no idea.
So I would say I'm fine with it either way. I mean, we can meet in Ponce. We could, you know, we could just do Zoom. Whatever's easiest. Whatever will get the most people on the
Stacy,
call.
you're in charge of.
No, Paul's the committee
No,
chair.
no,
Oh.
I'm talking about the facilities, recreation
Yeah.
facilities. So you could assure us that the tables are spaced out.
Yeah, we could meet at Ponce de Leon Center with 12 feet of social distancing. There are
and have the video
currently
capabilities.
8 members of the committee and then 1 member of the press. So you'd be somewhere around the 10 or 12 mark. If you give me just 1 second, I'm going to turn you around so you can see me real quick. So we have a book of directives here, as well as we keep up with how many people we can put in each of our facilities with social distancing. So in room A, the conference setup will only allow for 4 if you're doing 12 feet. Room B will allow you to do 4 more with 12 feet. So if you open them up to each other, you could put probably, room C, you could probably put 10 people in there at 12 feet with no mask. Or you can choose to go over to the Cortez Pavilion, and you could do 6 feet of social distancing at Cortez Pavilion, and then you wouldn't have to wear a mask. So I guess the first
But no
question
recording,
Paul, would
right?
be, do you want an indoor facility or an outdoor facility?
But outdoor, how would we record?
It's a great question, and one in which I can ask my staff. Ponce is set up already to record. And I'm with Guy here because our offices are located in the gym. masks are required at all times here in terms of outside of our offices when we're in the main part of the gym. And they get old fast.
Yeah.
To talk through them, it is, so we could do it at Ponce, and then Paul, we could see how many people are coming. Then you would have the ability to Zoom and the ability to have people in person. I guess I just need to know from the committee, and Lori kind of brought it to a head. Do you want to meet in person? You want to meet via Zoom?
Well, Zoom has worked so far so good. But I'm very interested to learn about that Ponce situation. You're talking room A and B is only capable of holding 10 people possibly at 12-foot distancing?
Yeah, so we'll need to measure. We measured it for phase 1, and we knew that that was 6 feet with masks. So what I'm doing is taking the 8 that's allowed in A and the 8 that's allowed in B. If you're going 12 feet, then you're going to get half of that. Now, when you open them up to each other, you're going to get some additional spacing in there. So you may be able to get 8 to 10 people in there at a 12-foot social distance.
Oh, yeah. So that's very interesting. What I'm really concerned with is that there's a board meeting tomorrow, which they're wanting me to come to. And I already pointed out to them that there really wasn't enough tables for everybody to even be 6 feet apart, let alone 12 feet apart.
Kirk, that's between Diana and John and how the board kind of sets up their meetings. So
Right.
Everything else that we're doing and what we're talking about in terms of the health department directives are geared towards facilities that are rental facilities that are allowing members of the public to come in. And so if you're having a closed door meeting in a facility that is owned or operated by the people who are meeting in that facility, that's different.
Oh.
What we're talking about, a large indoor facility for rent.
Oh.
And so when you're using that as someone who's operating that business, like, there's some leeway there. That's
I see.
Directed. Yeah. So that's going to be the big difference when we talk about the Department of Health's requirements for public to be able to come in and do those things. That's the big difference there.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to put you back to Jan. All right.
All right. So how many people would like to meet in person at Ponce next month?
Four.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you all decide.
Doesn't really matter.
No mask, guy. No mask. We'll
Yeah, no mask, that's the only thing.
Bring one if you want.
No mask, no mask.
Well, here's what I would say. Having said that, you will have to wear a mask into the building.
Yeah.
12 feet apart and sit down, you can then take your mask off. So masks are still required in the common areas where you can't ensure that you're going to be 12 feet away from somebody.
I made a lot of sales calls last week, and I had to wear it in the facility, but could sit down and talk to someone without it because what you just said earlier, that gets real old. What'd you say? And I was just, yeah.
So Paul, what I'll do is I'll schedule a Ponce de Leon Center then for the next Trails Committee meeting in July.
Okay.
July 21st.
That sounds good.
Assuming we can fit in there and be 12 feet apart, Stacy.
Well, and here's the thing, we can do that. The other thing is that spacing may have decreased by then. So if we know that we can meet in there at 12 feet, if the governor decreases that space from 12 feet to 6 feet for no masks, then that would certainly, he's committed to not going backwards on a phase. He just may not move out of phase 2 for a while. So that's what I can do is reserve Ponce Center for July 21st. And then we can go from there.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Kirk, did you have something to say?
Well, yeah, that is that if you're expecting 12-foot spacing when you get there, that may not be the case because according to what I just heard is that their private meetings supposedly with the board of directors, their tables are only spaced 6 feet apart at this point. Now, Whether they're ever going to change to 12 feet or not, that's another story. But you could still sit in a chair 12 foot apart, further down the room there, I suppose.
Yes.
It may not, what I'm saying is it may not be set up for 12 feet when you get there.
We'll actually have it set in advance, Kurt.
Oh, good. That would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions or comments?
No.
All right. If no other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Aye.
moved.
Turn.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, say bye.
Bye.
Bye.